The number one topic that sellers need to address, because a lot of times we hear ideas that they may have that would actually sabotage their listing. And the very number one thing as a seller that you need to think about, and we're going to answer some questions now, is pricing. So what I want to start out with, and then I'm going to ask CJ a couple questions, is pricing is going to be based, number one, on location. So it's even national. As we all know, it's much more expensive to buy a home in California versus Florida. Well, it also works that way on a local level. Pricing locally is going to start with your neighborhood. So you don't want to look for comps to compare your house to in another neighborhood. We want to approach this the same way an appraiser is going to do when they come to value your home. Now we're going to have a second kind of value, and that's the value that a buyer is willing to pay for your home. And this is where I want to turn to CJ for the way she approaches it with a lot of our listing appointments. We've got one commonality we see among most sellers is I've upgraded and I've spent this amount of money or that amount of money, and so I think I should get more. What are you finding between appraisers and buyers, and how do you coach sellers in addressing upgrades?
Okay, one of the most common issues that I run across when I'm meeting with a seller is the seller wants to, every seller wants to sell their house in the fastest amount of time with the least amount of hassle at the highest amount of money. So sometimes they're tempted when I do the market analysis and I come back and I say X is what I think we should go on the market at. And then the seller says, well, I want to price it higher to see what the market says. Well, I've already priced it higher to accommodate that. So when your realtor gives you the number should be whatever it's likely going to sell for plus a slight percentage up to accommodate for where we think the market is going and to give you a little wiggle room. Oftentimes when a seller hears that number, they're like, but I was thinking I wanted to leave myself room to negotiate. Well, I've already left you that room to negotiate. So if you take it up, you're oftentimes running the risk of the house sitting on the market and becoming stale. And then your neighbors drive by and go, what's wrong with that house? Why didn't it sell? Or even worse, what's wrong with that realtor? Why can't she sell that house? So it's a partnership, and you have to learn to trust your agent. And if you're not with an agent that you can trust and you trust the advice they're giving you on where the house should be priced based on the market, then you should probably find an agent that you do trust and that you're compatible with. So with that being said, we give you the number and it's your decision because you're in the driver's seat. But as Lisa was saying, everything comes back to three things: location, price, and then we want to add condition in. So the condition determines the price for obvious reasons, but there's another element of it that we oftentimes don't think about, and that's the financing piece. So right now I'm working on a project where we have a small house. It's technically a one-bedroom, and we've sold no one-bedroom houses in this market in the last 6 months. However, with a little modification, I can get that house to be a true two-bedroom, and with a few more repairs and upgrades, I can get that house financed either VA or FHA. Now, just being able to throw VA and FHA into the financing mix adds probably $25,000 to $45,000 to the sale price of that, the likely sale price of that house. So another agent came along and said, hey, I think you're probably going to get about $80,000. And then I came along and said, you know what, if you do this, this, and this, and you've got all the time in the world to do it, but the sooner you get it done, the more we'll be able to take advantage of the spring market, we can probably be between 125 and 145. So with the number, or 125 to 135 probably is more realistic based on the location. But it's a great little house, and just a few things, these people will put a ton more money in their pocket. Now, it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes your approach with a seller who has a situation, either they're mentally and emotionally detached, they've cut the umbilical cord, they're gone, they're done, they don't want to do anything else to that house. And that's okay too if you're willing to leave money on the table for the next guy. So in that scenario, we also understand, but as long as you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, understand, without throwing the additional components for financing, FHA and VA in the mix, then you're leaving money on the table for somebody else. And if you're okay with that, we're okay with that. We cut bait and run is what I call it. So put it on the market, sell it, move on, and that kind of takes us to the pyramid of buyers. So we kind of look at the buying pool like we look at houses sometimes. So we put a nice house like the one you have on the market here in Dunn's Creek Plantation. This is a beautiful home. It's priced well over what? We're over
285.
Yeah, we're over 250, and we see that 250, 200 being thresholds for a lot of buyers. Being over the 250 here, that means that pyramid of buyers, it's like this instead of like this. Now, I'm not suggesting the seller prices house lower just because to open it up to more buyers like that, you know, that's a $35,000 difference, but that's an example of, say, you're hovering around the 200 mark, say, or the 300 mark, or even the 400 mark. So if you just want to try the market and get that 405, however, knocking it up over 400 knocks out all the buyers that are under 400, and many times that threshold for an approval is right at 400. So rarely do people say, well, I'll go up to 410 and think I can negotiate down. This is a seller's market. What do we have inventory for? Like, if we took no new listings on the market anytime in the next 2 months, it would take us a month and a half to 2 months to sell everything we have on the market right now. That's called a saturation rate of about 1.5 to 2 months. That's a ridiculous number. A healthy market has 5 to 6 months of inventory. We don't. So when you know the inventory is down and the house is desirable, you don't want to monkey around with people who are, you know, looking to make low price offers. When we're in a buyer's market, totally different scenario. But in the market that we're in today, then you want to come in with your best offer or you probably won't get another chance. That's been our experience recently.
Absolutely.
So remember your pyramid of buyers, the higher you price it, the smaller that pyramid gets, but the lower you price it or the more financing options, it opens that pyramid up to a whole lot more in terms of buyer prospects.
So when we as realtors or any realtor you decide to hire come up with a price for the house, they're not just throwing a random number at you. There is a thought process that goes into it. We have to juggle the appraisal value, which we've already talked about. We have to juggle the buyer's perception of value, which we talked about. So I just kind of want to give you a little more insight on how I do that when I'm talking to a seller. So for appraisal values, we do the exact same thing appraiser's going to do. We look 6 months back in your neighborhood for a house your size, and we try to find the same number of bedrooms. Now, to determine what a buyer is going to think, I'm going to focus more on the last 3 months of sales because those are the most current buyers. And what are your neighbors selling for? What features do they have? Do they have a 3-car garage and you only have a 2-car garage? So when we're recommending a price to you, it's not only what the appraiser is going to appraise for, but what is the next likely buyer going to pay for your house. CJ, how do you kind of approach that, and what are your thoughts on the same thing?
I do the same thing. When I'm looking at the numbers for the sale price, I'm looking at if I'm in a newer community, say Cedar Brook, for instance, where you have 3 builders in there and a ton of houses that have sold recently, then I actually have to narrow it down even further from the last 3 months. I have to narrow it down by builder because not every builder puts out the same kind of product. So if you're like one builder may have all solar panels and be all green and 0 lot line, whereas the other builder may include pavered driveways and water spigots and nobody else does, or something like that. So when you've got too much data like that, then we start parsing it out by, okay, who built your house? What was the timing of it? And where do I see the market going? What is my active competition? Okay, I might have seen a healthy sale history in the last 3 to 6 months, but everybody else saw it too, and they all said, hey, it's January, let's flood the market with 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot houses. And when they've all done that and they're all built by the same builder and they all have the same amenities, then it's going to be up to the seller to say, okay, do I need to sell now or not? And if I do, how aggressive do I need to be with that sales price? And the other things I may want to include. I might want to say, hey, All the other houses are the same, but I'm going to throw in a year's worth of lawn care for you, or lawn chemical treatment, or something like that to set themselves apart from everyone else. So when we're trying to determine value, we're also looking at where is the market going. So maybe converse is the answer. Maybe we've had a not healthy sales history, but things are looking really good going forward because everything's already sold and there's nothing left in the community. Well, I might want to play a little fast and loose with those numbers. You know, that takes us to another thing too. We often get asked the question, what do you think my house is worth? What I think doesn't matter at all. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is what is the seller willing to sell, the buyer willing to buy, and what do the numbers support? And why do we care what the numbers support? Because if there is appraisal involved, then somebody else is going to be looking at those numbers. So you can have a really excited seller and a really excited buyer. We're all on the same page and we all want to pay $50,000 too much and everybody's okay with that. But if an appraiser comes in, he's going to say, yeah, I don't think that's going to work for us. Here's what I think the house is really worth.
And you just got one of those texts right before we started filming.
I did. On a property that a seller had put a ton of money into, over and above. I mean, she really went over and above for this first-time home buyer in a first-time home buyer program, and the appraisal came in today, and it's a couple thousand lower, and this lady's already done all this extra work. So it's really heartbreaking to have to break that news to people, and that's why being able to see into the future and look at it like a big picture. I rarely want to answer the question, what do I think your house is worth? Because it really is a big picture question. It's a, what does the outside look like? What is your timeline? What is your end goal? My end goal is to be moved to Kansas in 2021. Well, why are we even talking today? Today, don't worry about the value. Today, you need to do this, this, and this to get your landscaping done and ready for the photographer a year from now. So it's a big picture thing. Who can be financed? Who is your likely pool of buyers? Is there a business that supports housing in this neighborhood? And for our area, it's oftentimes the military. We're triangulated between 3 bases, and we still have other military that comes into the area retiring because everybody wants to move to Florida, right? Yes, you do. And you want to use the Lisa Duke team to get it done.
Absolutely.
So it is a big picture question, and we have to go back to the numbers, and the numbers will decide what is the likely sales price. But at the end of the day, the seller's in the driver's seat. Seller makes that decision. We make recommendations, and we all decide if we can work together.
Absolutely. So when you get ready to sell, if you want to start on Zillow to get an idea, you can do that. But when you're ready to price your biggest investment that you've made in your lifetime, you want to consult with a realtor that's going to look back at what it has sold for, also has the ability to look forward at what it should sell for, and help you price it where it will sell.